Welcome to the Strategy Sync YouTube channel. Please subscribe and like to hear new book summaries.
It's great to be here. This is a topic I'm really excited to get into.
I think so too, because today we are basically opening up a cold case file, one that's been sitting around for almost 2,000 years. We're going back to the Roman Empire to talk about a figure who gets called the JFK, or maybe the Princess Diana of his time.
That comparison comes up constantly, and it's a good one. You're talking about immense charisma, this golden lineage, and of course, a tragic premature death that sparked a million conspiracy theories.
Exactly. We are doing a deep dive into the life and, more importantly, the death of Germanicus Julius Caesar. If you know even a little Roman history, you know the name. He had it all, the perfect bloodline, the legions adored him. They literally wanted to make him emperor right there on the spot.
But he never got there. He died at 33, far from home in Syria, under, well, let's call them extremely suspicious circumstances.
Suspicious is a mild way to put it. The entire ancient world was screaming poison.
And they weren't just blaming some random rival. The rumors, the whispers, they all pointed in one direction, straight to the top, to his own uncle, the sitting emperor, Tiberius.
Right, and that's the story that's been passed down for centuries, the one we all kind of know. The jealous, brooding old emperor gets rid of the popular young prince because he's a threat.
It's the plot of I, Claudius. It's in countless books. It's the standard narrative.
But the book we're diving into today, Germanicus, Rome's Unlucky Prince by Alessio Perry, it takes that 2,000-year-old story and just, well, it pretty much throws it in the trash.
It absolutely does. Perry's entire thesis is that this supposed deep-seated hatred between Tiberius and Germanicus, which is the bedrock of how we see this era, was largely a fabrication.
A fabrication, so not real.
He argues it was constructed after Germanicus was already dead, mostly by political factions who had their own agendas. It was a story that served a purpose.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive. To strip away all that propaganda, all the rumors, and try to find the real Germanicus. We need to figure out what his relationship with Tiberius was really like and why his death caused this political earthquake that ended up destroying his own family.
And you can't even begin to do that without first talking about his pedigree. I mean, his bloodline. You have to understand the sheer pressure this man was under from the day he was born. He wasn't just another aristocrat.
Perry calls him a genetic experiment in political stability.
That's a perfect way to put it. Because Rome, at this exact moment, had these two massive family dynasties, these political clans. They were always circling each other. The Julians and the Claudians.
Okay, break those down for us. Who are the Julians?
The Julians are the family of Julius Caesar and, of course, Augustus. They were the rock stars. Populist, charismatic, seen as divinely touched. The people absolutely adored them. They were, glamorous, but maybe a little reckless.
And the Claudians.
The Claudians were the complete opposite. They were one of the oldest, most patrician families in Rome. Stiff, conservative, traditionalist, sometimes incredibly arrogant. But they were brilliant administrators. They were the law and order party. Not flashy, but effective.
And Germanicus is somehow supposed to be both.
He is the living, breathing intersection of these two warring traditions. His mother was Antonia, who was the daughter of Mark Antony. That's pure Julian blood, the glamour, the direct connection to Augustus's own family.
Right.
But his father was Drusus the Elder, a Claudian. And Drusus's brother was the man who would become the emperor Tiberius. So in Germanicus, you have Julian charisma and Claudian duty all mixed up in one person. He was designed to be the ultimate compromise.
And that design was intentional. This was Augustus, the first emperor, basically playing 4D chess with his own succession.
100%. Augustus was haunted by the civil wars that brought him to power. He was obsessed with creating a stable transfer of power. So around 4 CE, he knows he's getting old, and he has to lock in the future.
So what does he do?
He officially adopts Tiberius the Claudian as his own son and makes him his direct heir. Tiberius was in his 50s, a proven general, a safe pair of hands.
But there's a catch. With Augustus, there's always a catch.
There's a huge catch. He says to Tiberius, "I'm adopting you, but on one condition, you must immediately adopt Germanicus."
Let's just pause on that for a second, because that's a huge deal. Tiberius already had a son of his own, didn't he? A biological son.
Exactly. Tiberius had his own son, Drusus the Younger. And Augustus basically says, "I don't care. Your nephew Germanicus now becomes your son too, and you will place him in the line of succession right alongside your own flesh and blood."
Wow. That feels like a recipe for a psychological disaster. You're forcing a man to elevate his nephew to the same level as his own child.
It creates what the book calls a dual heir system. The idea was that Tiberius, the older, experienced Claudian, would be the bridge. He'd keep things steady. But Germanicus, the young, charismatic Julian-Claudian hybrid, he was the future. He was the long-term promise of the dynasty.
It seems so obvious that Tiberius would resent that. I mean, that's just a human reaction. The standard historical take from historians like Tacitus is that this is where the poison starts, that Tiberius just seethes with resentment from day one.
That is the standard take. But Perry's argument in the book is, okay, let's put the gossip aside for a minute and just look at their actions. When things got really tough, did they actually turn on each other? And the first massive test comes the second Augustus dies in 14 CE.
The succession crisis, this is always a dangerous moment in any monarchy, right? The old king is dead, the new one isn't quite settled on the throne.
And it's even more dangerous because the Roman Empire is still a new invention. It's fragile. And hundreds of miles away on the Rhine frontier, the legions decide they're not too happy with the new management back in Rome.
This is the Rhine Mutiny.
Yes. And you really have to picture the scene. You have tens of thousands of professional soldiers, hardened veterans, stuck in these muddy forts on the German border.
Not a glamorous posting.
Not at all. And they have legitimate grievances. They haven't been paid properly. Their contracts are up, but they're not being discharged. Some of these guys have been in the army for 25, 30 years. They just want their retirement bonus and a plot of land.
And they blame Tiberius for this.
They see him as stingy, which, to be fair, he was. He was very careful with the state's money. So they want a payout. But more than that, they look at their own commander, Germanicus, who is right there with them in the camp, and they say, hang on, why don't you be emperor?
I mean, it makes sense from their perspective.
It makes perfect sense. They say, you have the blood of Augustus. You're charismatic. We love you. And most importantly, we have the swords. We can make this happen.
This is the moment. This is the test. If Germanicus had any secret ambition, if he harbored any of that resentment towards Tiberius that the historians talk about, this was his golden ticket.
It's a textbook coup opportunity. He has the largest, most powerful army in the empire begging him to take over. He could have marched on Rome and been emperor within weeks.
What does he do?
This is where Perry argues the whole rivalry myth just falls apart. Germanicus doesn't just say no. He has a complete and total meltdown. He sees the very suggestion as a personal insult, a stain on his honor and his family's loyalty.
He gets emotional about it.
Incredibly emotional. The book describes him leaping up onto a tribunal, shouting at his own soldiers that he would rather die than betray his father and his emperor.
It's very theatrical.
Extremely. He actually pulls out his own sword and holds it to his chest, threatening to commit suicide right there in front of them if they don't drop this talk of treason.
That is very dramatic. Very Julian, you could say.
Absolutely. There's this grimly funny moment where one of the soldiers in the crowd, trying to call his bluff, yells out, "Here, take my sword, it's sharper." So it wasn't all high drama.
The Roman sense of humor was a bit dark.
A bit, yes. But the point is, Germanicus flatly refuses the throne. And then he does something even more incredible. He realizes that words aren't going to be enough to calm these guys down. So he pays them their overdue bonuses out of his own personal funds.
He bankrupts himself to save his uncle's throne.
Essentially, yes. He uses his wife's inheritance, his own money, everything he has, to buy their loyalty back. Not for himself, but for Tiberius. If you're looking for evidence of a deep-seated rivalry, this is the exact opposite of what you'd expect to see.
It proves he was loyal.
It proves, Perry argues, that they were a team. Tiberius was the CEO back in Rome, dealing with the snarky senators. Germanicus was the COO on the frontier, managing the biggest operational division. They trusted each other.
Okay, so he's quelled the mutiny, but now he has this huge, restless army that's just been reminded of its own power. He needs to point them at an enemy.
Idle hands do the devil's work, as they say. The best way to stop soldiers from thinking about politics is to give them a war to fight. So Germanicus pivots immediately and launches a massive invasion across the Rhine into Germany.
And this brings us to the next section of the book, which Perry calls Ghosts in the Forest. This part is less about politics and more. Well, it's almost like a psychological horror story.
It really is. Because Germanicus isn't just fighting for a bit of territory. He's on a mission to heal a deep national trauma. And to understand that, we have to talk about the Varian disaster.
The Battle of the Teutoburg Forest in 9 CE. It's hard to overstate how badly this shook the Romans, isn't it?
It was their Vietnam. It was a national humiliation on a scale they had never experienced. 3 entire legions, maybe 20,000 men under a general named Varus, were led into an ambush in the Teutoburg forest by a Germanic chieftain named Arminius.
Now, Arminius actually knew the Romans. He'd served with them.
That's what made it so galling. He knew their tactics, he lured them into the forest, and in a 3-day running battle, he annihilated them. The bodies were never properly buried, the legion's sacred standards, their eagles, were captured. Roman expansion into Germany just stopped, dead in its tracks.
So it was this open wound in the Roman psyche.
A gaping wound. So 6 years later, Germanicus marches his army back into that exact same forest. He's not just conquering, he's on an exorcism. He's going to find the bodies and restore Roman honor.
And the description of what they find in the book is just chilling.
It's haunting. They find the remains of Varus's camp, and then they find the bones of the soldiers, bleached white, scattered across the forest floor. Some are still nailed to trees where they'd been tortured.
Horrifying.
They find crude altars built by the Germanic tribes, where the Roman officers, the centurions, and tribunes had been ritually sacrificed to their gods. It's a house of horrors. Germanicus is literally walking his men through a graveyard of their fallen comrades.
And this leads to a very specific incident that the book uses to highlight the fundamental difference between Germanicus and Tiberius.
Yes, Germanicus is so moved by what he sees that he orders the army to stop and collect the bones for a proper burial. And he doesn't just give the order, he participates. He gets down on his hands and knees and helps gather the remains himself.
To us, that sounds like brilliant leadership, showing empathy, honoring the fallen, giving them closure.
To a modern mind, absolutely. It's what you'd want your general to do. But when word of this gets back to Tiberius in Rome, he is not happy. In fact, he's furious.
Why? Is this the jealousy Tacitus talks about? Was he just looking for an excuse to criticize him?
This is where Perry really adds that layer of nuance. He argues, no, it wasn't spite. It was about religion and Roman law. Germanicus wasn't just a general. He also held the priesthood of an augur.
A high priest, basically.
A very important one. And under strict Roman religious law, a priest of his stature was forbidden from making contact with the dead. It was considered a source of ritual pollution. It desecrated his office.
So it's a clash of worldviews. Germanicus is leading from the heart, thinking about the morale of his soldiers in that moment.
Exactly. He's being an emotional, charismatic leader. Tiberius, back in Rome, is leading from the rulebook. He's thinking about the abstract laws of the state and the proper relationship with the gods. It's the populist versus the traditionalist in a nutshell.
It perfectly captures their dynamic.
It really does. But despite the reprimand, Germanicus's campaign is, from a military standpoint, a success. He eventually tracks down Arminius's army and crushes them at a battle called Itis de Visus.
This is a huge win. They even recover 2 of the 3 lost eagles.
This is the moment Germanicus becomes a national superstar, the new Alexander the Great. He has avenged the national shame. He has restored Roman honor. He is at the absolute peak of his popularity and glory.
And right at that moment, a message arrives from Tiberius. And it says, "Come home. The war is over."
And of course, the ancient historians, especially Tacitus, pounce on this. They say, see? There it is, the jealousy. Tiberius couldn't stand Germanicus being a hero, so he pulled the plug on his campaign to steal his glory.
That's the easy, dramatic narrative. But does the book argue that the facts support it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Perry makes a very compelling case that this was a purely strategic decision, not a personal one. If you look at the balance sheet, the war was incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
On the journey back from one of the campaigns, the Roman fleet was hit by a massive storm in the North Sea, and they lost hundreds of ships and thousands of men. The cost in gold and manpower to hold Germany was astronomical. And even after the victory at Itis de Visus, Arminius just melted back into the forests. It was an unwinnable guerrilla war.
So Tiberius wasn't acting like a jealous uncle grounding a popular teenager. He was acting like a CEO canceling a project that was way over budget and had no clear path to profitability.
That's the perfect analogy. Tiberius looked at the return on investment and said, this isn't worth it. We've made our point, we've avenged Varus, we got the eagles back, let's declare victory and get out before we lose another army. It was a prudent, if unpopular, strategic withdrawal.
And the proof that it wasn't personal animosity is what happens when Germanicus gets back to Rome.
Exactly. Tiberius doesn't just quietly thank him, he grants him a full triumph. This is the highest military honor a Roman can receive. You get to parade through Rome in a golden chariot wearing a purple toga, treated like a living god for a day.
You don't give that to someone you're trying to suppress. A triumph is a massive political boost.
It gives a man enormous prestige and political capital.
Yeah.
If Tiberius was genuinely afraid of Germanicus's popularity, the last thing he would do is give him a citywide party and remind everyone what a hero he was.
So Germanicus comes home, he has his parade, the crowds go wild, everything seems fine, but he doesn't get to enjoy a long vacation. In 17 CE, he gets a new assignment.
A huge one. He is sent to the east, to Syria, Armenia, the volatile border with the Parthian Empire. And this is where the story shifts from a military epic into a full-blown political thriller.
This is section 3 in the book, the Cold War in the East.
Right. The eastern frontier was a diplomatic nightmare. It was all these client kingdoms and buffer states constantly shifting their allegiances between Rome and Parthia. Tiberius needed his best guy out there to sort it all out.
And he gives Germanicus a special kind of authority to do it.
He gives him imperium maius. We need to define that because it's so important.
What does it mean?
It literally means greater power. It's a specific legal command that places Germanicus above every other Roman governor in the entire eastern half of the empire. His word is law. It effectively makes him a kind of vice-emperor for the East.
Okay, so again, this is an incredible sign of trust from Tiberius. He's giving him supreme power over a massive territory.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But at the same time, Tiberius makes another appointment. He names a new governor of Syria, the most important province in the region, a man named Gnaeus Calpurnius Piso.
And if this were a movie, this is when the ominous music would start playing.
Piso is a real piece of work. He's an old-school, hardcore Republican aristocrat.
Huh.
He fundamentally despises the fact that the Republic is gone and that one family, the Caesars, is now running everything.
So he's not a fan of the new system.
Not at all. He sees himself as Germanicus' social equal, maybe even his superior. He doesn't see himself as a subordinate. And he was famously arrogant, stubborn, and had a terrible temper.
And this is where the conspiracy theories really kick into high gear, with the rumor of the occulta mandata.
The secret instructions, yes. The gossip in Rome was that when Piso left for Syria, Tiberius gave him secret, off-the-books orders to undermine Germanicus at every turn, to be a thorn in his side, to keep him in check.
Does the book buy into that? Did Tiberius intentionally set his nephew up to fail?
Perry takes a really interesting middle ground here, which I find very convincing. He doesn't think Tiberius sent Piso to be an assassin.
Yeah.
But he does think Tiberius absolutely sent him to be a check and balance.
A babysitter.
A grumpy, conservative babysitter, yes. Think about it. Germanicus is young. He's a bit of a rock star. He can be impulsive. Piso is old, by the book, and a total traditionalist. Tiberius probably thought Piso's rigid nature would keep Germanicus from getting too carried away with his own power. He miscalculated badly.
Because it wasn't a check and balance, it was a total personality clash from day one.
A complete disaster. Germanicus is touring the region, charming local kings, sometimes even dressing in Greek clothes to show respect.
Yeah.
Piso is marching around in his heavy Roman toga, barking orders and openly contradicting and ignoring Germanicus's instructions.
And there's an incident at a banquet that the book highlights, which just perfectly captures this tension.
The banquet with the king of the Nabateans, yes. The king, as a gesture of hospitality, presents Germanicus and his wife Agrippina with these heavy, elaborate golden crowns, the diplomatic gift.
And Piso
loses his mind. He stands up, takes his own crown, and throws it on the floor. He shouts that this is a banquet for a Roman official, not for the son of a Parthian king. He's publicly accusing Germanicus of acting like an Eastern monarch, of being un-Roman.
It's incredibly petty, but it says everything about his mindset.
It does. But the real legal trouble, the thing that gets Tiberius's attention, starts when Germanicus decides to take a little side trip. He goes on vacation to Egypt.
The Egypt incident, now, on the surface, who wouldn't want to see the pyramids? What's the big deal?
The big deal is bread. Egypt was unique in the empire. It wasn't a normal province governed by the Senate. It was the personal property of the emperor because it was the breadbasket of Rome. It supplied the vast majority of the grain that fed the capital. Augustus understood that if a rival general ever got control of Egypt, he could cut off the grain supply and starve Rome into submission within weeks.
So he made a special rule.
A very strict law. No senator, no one of high rank, was allowed to set foot in Egypt without the emperor's express written permission. It was a forbidden zone.
And Germanicus didn't ask for permission.
He just went. Now, the book suggests his motives were good. There was a famine, and he went to open the state granaries to feed people. And of course, to see the sights, the pyramids, the talking statues of Memnon, he was acting like a tourist king.
But legally, it was a huge overstep.
A massive breach of protocol. He was acting like he owned the place, and the place was the emperor's personal property. This is the one rule you did not break.
So if Tiberius was really looking for an excuse to crush Germanicus, this was it. This is arguably treasonous.
It absolutely is. And yet, what does Tiberius do? He doesn't have him arrested. He doesn't strip him of his command. He complains publicly to the Senate that Germanicus acted improperly. He gives him a public dressing down. It's a professional reprimand, a slap on the wrist.
Which, again, Perry uses as evidence against the idea of a deep-seated hatred. A real enemy would have used this to destroy him.
Exactly. Tiberius was clearly annoyed, but he let it go. It wasn't a death sentence.
So Germanicus finishes his tour of Egypt, comes back to his headquarters in Syria, and it is now the year 19 CE. And he walks into a mess.
He finds that while he was away, Piso has gone completely rogue. He's canceled all of Germanicus's diplomatic arrangements. He's moved legions without authorization. It's open insubordination.
Germanicus has finally had enough.
He's furious. He uses his imperium maius and officially orders Piso to leave the province. He says, "You're fired. Get out of Syria now."
But just as this political drama is reaching its peak, something else happens. Germanicus falls sick.
And not just a little sick. Violently ill. And this is where the story turns dark and the mystery truly begins. Because he doesn't just feel physically ill. He becomes convinced, absolutely certain, that he is the victim of black magic and poison.
And they find things in his house that feed this paranoia. The book details what was discovered in his quarters.
Yes, this is straight out of a horror movie. They search the villa where he's staying in Antioch, and under the floorboards and in the walls, they find what the Romans called defictiones.
Curse tablets.
Exactly. These were thin sheets of lead, inscribed with Germanicus's name, sometimes written backwards, along with magical symbols and curses, dedicating him to the gods of the underworld.
And it was more than just lead tablets.
Oh, yes. They also found ashes mixed with blood and, most disturbingly, fragments of human remains. Bits of bone, teeth hidden away. This was a full-blown magical assault.
Now, a modern person would say, okay, that's creepy, but lead tablets can't kill you.
Medically, no. But you have to put yourself in the mindset of a Roman. They believed in this stuff. Profoundly. For Germanicus, already sick and weak, to know that someone was actively performing these terrifying rituals against him. The psychological stress must have been immense. It was psychological warfare.
And he believes Piso and his wife, Plancina, are behind it.
He is utterly convinced. He sees it all as one coordinated attack. The insubordination, the arguments, and now the magic and poison.
And on his deathbed, he gathers his friends and family and gives a speech that will echo through Roman history.
He makes them swear an oath to avenge his death. He explicitly blames Piso, but then he turns to his wife, Agrippina, and we have to remember who she is. She's the granddaughter of Augustus. She's incredibly proud, fierce, and has a ferocious temper.
And Germanicus knows his wife.
He knows her very well, and the book highlights his last words to her as being a desperate warning. He tells her to control her temper and to not provoke those more powerful than herself.
He's saying, please, whatever you do not start a war with Tiberius over this.
Exactly. He's trying to protect his family from her righteous fury. He knows if she goes head-to-head with the emperor, she will lose, and she'll take the children down with her. He dies moments later.
And the reaction across the empire is just hysteria.
Universal grief. They compare it to the death of Alexander the Great. The Golden Prince is gone.
But Agrippina, she doesn't listen to a single word of his final advice, does she?
Not one. She puts his ashes in an urn, she boards a ship, and she sets a course for Italy. And she is not coming home as a grieving widow. She's coming home as a political martyr, carrying the remains of her murdered husband, and she is hell-bent on vengeance.
This brings us to the next act, the trial of the century. Agrippina lands in Italy, and the procession to Rome is incredible. The roads are lined with mourning crowds.
It's a national outpouring of grief. But as she gets closer to Rome, people start to notice who isn't there. Two people are conspicuously absent from the public mourning.
The Emperor Tiberius and his mother, the Empress Livia, they stay inside the palace.
They don't go out to meet the procession. They don't make a public show of grief.
That looks awful. I mean, from a public relations standpoint, that's a catastrophe. It looks like a confession.
It's exactly how the Roman people saw it. They were outraged. How could he be so cold? He must be guilty. But Perry, in the book, argues that we have to try to see it from Tiberius's perspective.
Which was?
He was a Stoic. He was a traditionalist. He believed that excessive public displays of emotion were undignified for a ruler. The emperor's job is to be the stable center of the state. He thought he was showing strength and resolve by staying in the palace and continuing to run the government. He believed the state must go on.
So he thought he was doing his duty.
But the people saw it as heartless. He completely misread the emotional mood of the country. It was maybe the single biggest PR disaster of his entire reign.
And while all this is happening, Piso, the man at the center of the accusations, is doing something monumentally stupid.
Instead of sailing directly back to Rome to prepare his legal defense, he gets it in his head that he can just retake his old province of Syria by force. He hires mercenaries, raises a small army, and actually attacks the new governor.
That's just open treason. There's no other word for it.
It's civil war. Plain and simple. It was an act of incredible arrogance and folly. So when he's finally captured and dragged back to Rome for his trial, he's not just facing one charge. He's facing three.
Poisoning, insubordination, and treason.
And the poisoning charge is the one everyone remembers, the one all the drama is about.
Mm-hmm.
But was it actually the strongest part of the case against him?
According to the book, not even close.
He was by far the weakest. Perry points out that the official records of the trial, which we still have parts of, show that even the prosecution struggled with it. The body of Germanicus had been publicly displayed in Antioch to look for signs of poison, but the results were inconclusive.
They had the cursed tablets.
They had the cursed tablets, but that's evidence of malicious intent, not of a successful poisoning. There was no smoking gun. The Senate, in the end, basically concluded they couldn't convict him on the murder charge.
But the other charges, insubordination and treason,
those were a slam dunk. Undeniable. He'd ignored direct orders from his superior officer, and then he'd raise a private army against the state. He was dead to rights on those.
So Piso's in the Senate. Tiberius himself reads out the charges, apparently in a very calm, impartial voice. And Piso must have realized something in that moment.
He realized the emperor wasn't going to save him. Tiberius was letting the law take its course. He had been cut loose.
And that night, Piso is found dead in his quarters.
His throat has been cut.
Suicide? Or was he suicide?
The official verdict was suicide, and Perry argues it was almost certainly a rational, if grim, choice. There's a quirk in Roman law. If you were convicted of treason, the state confiscated your entire fortune. Your family was left with nothing. They would be destitute. And if you died before the verdict was officially delivered, the trial was rendered moot. And your family got to keep the inheritance. Piso knew he was going to be convicted. He killed himself to save his children's financial future.
What a chillingly pragmatic end.
He was the final act of a proud, cornered Roman aristocrat.
But the trial isn't quite over. There's a loose end. Piso's wife, Plancina. She was accused of being his accomplice in both the poisoning and the black magic.
And this is where it gets really messy and personal, because Plancina was a very close friend of the Empress Livia, Tiberius's mother.
The most powerful woman in Rome.
And Livia intervenes. She puts intense private pressure on Tiberius to get Plancina acquitted. She basically calls in a favor, and it's one Tiberius can't refuse. He leans on the Senate, and Plancina is allowed to walk free.
Agrippina must have been incandescent with rage.
It was the ultimate insult. In her eyes, one of her husband's murderers has just been let go because of palace politics. This is the moment that any chance of reconciliation dies. It becomes an all-out war between these two women, Agrippina and Livia, and by extension, between Agrippina and the entire imperial house.
Which brings us to the tragic final act. The book calls it the War of the Widows. The fallout from the trial destroys what's left of Germanicus's family.
Right. Agrippina now sees herself as the leader of the opposition. She never stops reminding people that she is the last true granddaughter of the divine Augustus. She flaunts her children, Germanicus's children, as the true heirs.
She's brave, but the book portrays her as politically reckless.
Incredibly so. She embraces the narrative that Tiberius is an evil tyrant who murdered her perfect husband. She holds her own court, gathers allies in the Senate. She's creating a shadow government, a faction dedicated to her family.
And in doing so, she makes a new and far more dangerous enemy than Piso ever was.
She runs right into the web of Sejanus. We have to talk about Lucius Aelius Sejanus. He's the commander of the Praetorian Guard. He's the head of the emperor's security, his secret police. He's ambitious, brilliant, and utterly ruthless.
And he sees Agrippina's faction as a threat to his own power.
He sees it as an opportunity. He realizes the surest way to increase his own influence over Tiberius is to feed the emperor's natural paranoia.
How does he do that?
He isolates Tiberius. He becomes his only trusted source of information. And he's constantly whispering in his ear, Agrippina is plotting against you. Look at how she uses her sons. The people love them more than they love you. You're not safe. He poses as the loyal servant protecting his master, when in reality he's driving a wedge between the family members for his own gain.
There's a scene the book describes, a dining room scene, that just perfectly illustrates how toxic and broken the relationship had become.
It's the point of no return. Tiberius, perhaps trying to make one last gesture of peace, is at a dinner party. He picks up an apple, compliments it, and offers it directly to Agrippina. A simple gesture from host to guest.
A peace offering.
And what does she do? She takes the apple, looks at it with suspicion, and then hands it to a servant to dispose of. She doesn't take a single bite.
Wow. She is publicly in front of the entire court, implying that the Emperor of Rome just tried to poison her.
It's a catastrophic insult. It's a public accusation of murder. And Tiberius is deeply, personally wounded by it. He turns to his mother and says, "Can anyone blame me if I decide to deal with this woman harshly?" And that's the justification Sejanus needed. The gloves were off.
And what follows is just a brutal purge.
Tiberius, sick of the drama and the politics of Rome, eventually retires to the island of Capri. He essentially leaves Sejanus in charge as his deputy. And Sejanus uses that power to systematically annihilate Agrippina's family and supporters.
It happens to her.
Agrippina is arrested and exiled to a barren island. She's beaten so badly in custody that she loses an eye. Eventually, she starves herself to death in protest.
In her sons, Germanicus' sons.
Her two eldest sons, Nero and Drusus, not the famous emperor, these are different ones, are also arrested on trumped-up treason charges. They're imprisoned in the basement of the palace and are also left to starve to death.
It's just an incredibly tragic end. Germanicus, the man who was so loyal, who refused a crown to save the system, his reward is that the very system he protected ends up devouring his wife and his children.
That's the bitter irony that Perry emphasizes. Germanicus's loyalty helped stabilize the empire at a crucial moment. But his wife's stubborn pride and her refusal to compromise, her need for a villain, gave an opportunist like Sejanus the opening he needed to destroy them all.
But the bloodline isn't totally extinguished. Germanicus had a lot of children. And this is where the story takes its final, fascinating turn. This is the final section of the book, the weaponization of memory. Germanicus may be dead, but his brand, his image, becomes the most powerful political tool in Rome.
This is the absolute core of Perry's argument. We've been taught to believe in this epic rivalry between the house of Tiberius and the house of Germanicus. But Perry says, before we go any further, just look at the relationship between Germanicus and Tiberius' own son, Drusus the Younger.
The man who should have been his chief rival, the evil stepbrother in the fairy tale.
Except he wasn't. All the evidence we have, coins, inscriptions, historical accounts, shows they were incredibly close, almost like best friends. They appeared on coins together as equals. When Germanicus died, it was Drusus who traveled to meet the funeral procession. He helped raise Germanicus's surviving children as if they were his own. The intense rivalry was a myth created later.
So who benefited from creating that myth?
The people who came next and needed a good story. Let's start with Caligula. He's Germanicus' third and only surviving son. He survives the purges because he was just a boy. When Tiberius finally dies, Caligula becomes emperor.
And he has no real experience. He's young, untested.
But he has one killer asset in his back pocket. He is the son of the universally beloved martyr Germanicus, and he leans on that for all it's worth.
How does he do that?
He builds his entire political legitimacy on it. One of the first things he does is mint these beautiful coins, the Signus Receptus coins, that show a heroic image of Germanicus recovering the lost eagle standards. The message to the army and the people is simple. You all love my father, the war hero? Well, I am his living legacy. He weaponizes his father's memory to validate his own rule.
And for that story to work, Tiberius has to be the villain.
Precisely. Caligula needs Tiberius to be the jealous tyrant who held his heroic father back. It's a political narrative that serves his own rise to power.
And then after Caligula is assassinated, his uncle Claudius becomes emperor, the brother of Germanicus.
Claudius, the black sheep of the family. Everyone thought he was an idiot. He had a limp, a stutter. He was a scholar, not a soldier. He becomes emperor and has zero military credibility. So what does he do?
He wraps himself in the flag of Germanicus.
Completely. He's constantly reminding people, I am the brother of the great Germanicus. He founds a colony for army veterans and names it Germanicea. He even marries Germanicus's daughter, Agrippina the Younger, to solidify that connection.
And there's that famous cameo, the Gemma Claudia, that the book discusses.
It's a stunning piece of propaganda. It's an intricate gem carving that shows Claudius and his hero, brother Germanicus, facing each other as equals. The visual argument is clear. Don't look at me, the awkward scholar. See me as the inheritor of his military glory. He's borrowing his dead brother's charisma.
And finally, we get to Nero, the grandson.
Nero has no real claim to power except for one thing. His mother is Germanicus's daughter. When Claudius dies, the Praetorian Guard rallies to Nero solely because he is the great-grandson of Augustus and the grandson of Germanicus. For 3 successive emperors, the ghost of Germanicus is the primary justification for their rule.
His memory becomes the foundation of the dynasty he never got to lead.
Exactly.
So let's bring it all together. The book's title is Germanicus, Rome's unlucky prince. After all this, why unlucky?
Well, the obvious reasons first. It's unlucky to die at 33. It's unlucky to be sent to a province with a governor like Piso, who seems determined to undermine you. But Perry argues that his greatest misfortune, his real bad luck, was what happened to his memory after he died.
How so?
Because his true story was erased. Think about who he really was based on his actions. He was a loyal servant of the state and of Tiberius. He was a moderate who refused a military coup. He was a team player. But that's not how history remembers him.
History remembers him as the victim of Tiberius.
Exactly. His image was hijacked. It was used by his own wife to try and tear down the emperor. It was used by his son Caligula to justify his own, often tyrannical reign. The memory of this loyal, stable man was twisted into a symbol of rebellion against the very system he fought to protect.
So the Germanicus that we all think we know, the perfect martyred hero in opposition to the evil emperor, is largely a ghost created by political propaganda.
That's the book's conclusion. The real man was a very capable, very loyal, maybe slightly overdramatic Roman general who got caught in the crossfire of a dynasty in transition. He was the ultimate company man, but his HR file was completely rewritten by the management that came after him.
It really is a powerful reminder that history is written by the victors, or at least by those who survive, to tell the tale. We want that clean narrative of the good prince versus the evil emperor.
But the reality, as is so often the case, is much messier. The truth is that the good prince was actually on the evil emperor's team, and the hatred that we take as fact was constructed later to serve the ambitions of others.
So what's the big takeaway for us then? Why should we care about this Roman prince from 2,000 years ago?
I think on one level, it's a great lesson in what you might call historical or even media literacy. You always have to ask, who is telling me this story and why? Tacitus, our main source, was writing decades later during a period when it was politically fashionable to hate the early emperors. He bought into the story Agrippina was selling.
It's a reminder to look past the official story and check the evidence.
Check the coins, the laws, the actions, not just the dramatic speeches written by a later historian. But I think there's another lesson, too. It's about the danger of charisma. Germanicus was so beloved, so popular, that his memory became a weapon that anyone could pick up and use long after he was gone.
That's a fascinating point. His image became more powerful than the man himself ever was.
Absolutely. It shows that in politics, a dead hero can often be far more useful than a living one. A dead hero can't disappoint you. He can't make mistakes. He can be whatever you need him to be.
A blank canvas for propaganda. That is a pretty chilling thought to end on.
And Germanicus's canvas has been painted on for 2 millennia.
Well, this has been an absolutely fantastic deep dive. I will definitely never look at that period of Roman history the same way again.
It's a great book. For anyone who loves a good historical mystery that challenges what you think you know, it's a must-read.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please subscribe to the Strategy Sync YouTube channel for more. We will catch you in the next one.